Have you ever been in the following situation? You've been working on the design of a product for a really long time, and then after a few months you realize that the developers have coded something that has nothing to do with your design. So in order to avoid this situation, I'm gonna share with you a few tips today on how to do proper design handoffs. One of the crucial steps in the product development process is actually coding the product. So how do you ensure that your designs are being properly implemented by the development team? It's actually not that difficult. You just need to have a proper design handoff process. So first of all, what is a design handoff? A design handoff is basically the process of your design files coming from your hands, changing hands from you to the development team. So you're just handing off your files to developers. It's that easy. So how do you avoid any miscommunication and misinterpretation of your designs? How do you ensure that the developers are implementing your designs one-on-one, so when you see the product live, it's actually exactly what you designed? Okay, so first of all, I advise you to have a first talk with your development team. Whether you're working with a remote development team or you're working in an office, this doesn't really make a difference. Just schedule a 10-minute call where you explain what you're intending to do, explain that you have prepared some documentation and that you're ready with the design files, and ask them already if there's something specific that they need. This is what I usually do, because sometimes you wouldn't think of things that developers need. I'm personally not a coder, or at least not yet, so I wouldn't know if there's something specific that they might need. So this is the first crucial step. After that, I usually prepare a really well-written documentation file. Why do I do that? Because it might be that the development team changes, so you want to have a written down version or a description of what the product does or what your design does, where to find what. It doesn't need to be like a 50 pages file, but like a super short documentation of 2 to 3 pages is a good starting point for all developers. Next, I make sure that I create a style guide. Now, depending on whether or not you're working on a small or big project, you're either going to create like a super simple style guide inside Sketch, or if you're working in a bigger company, it might be that they're already using a design system, so you can actually skip that step. However, if the company is big and the product is complicated, then of course you need to create a more complicated style guide. Of course, I don't mean complicated style guide, but I mean like an extensive style guide. So not just the colors and the typography, but you should also create the different components, how they stick together, and also don't forget the assets. So once you have the style guide, I usually use InVision to upload my designs to the tool and share it with the developers, or I use Zeppelin.io. Zeppelin.io is super easy to use, and they've recently added a new feature called Global Style Guides, which basically allows you to connect your design systems to your development team. So if you are not familiar with that, I would definitely give that a try. Once I'm done with the style guide, I move on to the specs. Basically, the developers need to know the exact sizes of everything in your designs so they can actually implement it the proper way. Again, I'm using either InVision or Zeppelin.io to share this with them, but you may find another way. There are not a lot of developers I know that can recreate my designs from just a simple PNG file. Next, if I'm working on a big project, I usually make sure that I'm preparing a user flow using the screens that I have designed. Because imagine that you have designed like over 150 screens and that it will be so difficult to explain how those screens fit together and what is the logic behind it. So a user flow here is highly recommended. Here is an example of a user flow that I've recently created for a huge project that I've been working on. A simple Sketch plugin called user flows will help you create those flows right inside Sketch so you can export them as a PDF or PNG or whatever else you need. Once you're done with the user flow, I really highly suggest that you create a high-fidelity prototype. Now that the developers know how the screens are connected together, if you're using any fancy animations or something that is super difficult to explain unless you actually show them the animation, then I really highly recommend that you do that. The tool that I use is called Anima. They have a super nice feature where you can just upload your designs and share them with the developers. And as far as I know, you can also export the code, or they can export the code, so it'd be super easy for them to implement those interactions one-on-one. Last but not least, once you're done with everything, put it in a nice zip file or just summarize it and hold another proper design handoff meeting with all of the development team. If they have any questions, they will let you know and you will be able to add the missing pieces to your documentation or your design files. So this is how I do it. I hope this helps you as well, and let me know in the comments below if you like this video and if you're also doing something else in order to ensure a proper design handoff.